1974 1787 Ryu, son of Peleg, was born. Minus 1942 1819 Sirach, son of Ryu, was born. Minus 1912 1849 Nakrai, son of Sirach, was born. Minus 1883 1878 Terah, son of Nakrai, was born. The Forefathers. Secular year Jewish year event in history. Minus 1813 1948 Abraham, son of Terah, was born. Minus 1803 1958 Sarah, daughter of Haran, was born. Minus 1788 1973 Abraham married Sarah. Minus 1765 1996 dispersion from Babel after building the tower. Minus 1761 2000 Terah left Ur cast in with his family. Minus 1755 2006 Noah died. Minus 1743 2018 The covenant, Brit Bain Habitarim, with Abraham. Minus 1738 2023 Abraham settled in Canaan. Minus 1727 2034 Ishmael, son of Abraham, was born. Minus 1713 2048 Abraham circumcised himself in Ishmael. Minus 1713 2048 Sodom and Gomorrah were destroyed. Minus 1713 2048 Isaac, son of Abraham, was born. Minus 1677 2084 The Agda, where Isaac was brought on the altar by Abraham. Minus 1677 2084 Sarah died. Minus 1653 2108 Jacob and Esau were born. Minus 1638 2123 Abraham died. Minus 1603 2158 Shem, son of Noah, died. Minus 1590 2171 Isaac blessed Jacob instead of Esau. Minus 1576 2185 Jacob went to Haran. Minus 1574 2187 Eber, great-grandson of Shem, died. Minus 1569 2192 Jacob married Leah and Rachel. Minus 1566 2195 Levi, son of Jacob and Leah, was born. Minus 1562 2199 Joseph, son of Jacob and Rachel, was born. Minus 1556 2205 Jacob left Haran. Minus 1553 2208 Benjamin was born. Minus 1545 2216 Joseph was sold. Minus 1533 2228 Isaac died. Minus 1532 2229 Joseph became Viceroy of Egypt. Minus 1526 2235 Kahat, son of Levi, was born. Minus 1523 2238 Jacob, and his family, went to Egypt. Living in Egypt. Secular year Jewish year event in history. Minus 1506 2255 Jacob died. Minus 1429 2332 after Levi died. The enslavement in Egypt began. Minus 1393 2368 Moses was born. Minus 1355 2406 Joshua was born. Minus 1314 2447 Moses encountered the burning bush. Minus 1313 2448 The Jewish nation left Egypt. Traveling through the desert. Secular year Jewish year event in history. Minus 1313 2448 The Jewish nation crossed the Red Sea. Minus 1313 2448 The revelation at Mount Sinai and the giving of the Torah. Minus 1313 2448 Moses broke the tablets. Minus 1312 2449 Moshe came down Mount Sinai with the second tablets. Minus 1312 2449 The tabernacle was erected. Minus 1312 2449 The spies returned from Canaan with bad news. Minus 1274 2487 Aharon and Miriam died. Minus 1273 2488 Moses died. Judges and early prophets. Secular year Jewish year event in history. Minus 1273 2488 The Jews crossed the Jordan into Canaan. Minus 1258 2503 The appointment of the land of Israel was completed. Minus 1,245 2,516 Joshua died. Minus 1,228 2,533 The rule of judges began with Othniel ben Kenaz. Minus 1,188 2,573 Ehud ben Gera became leader. Minus 1,107 2,654 Shamgar ben Anath died. Minus 1,107 2,654 Deborah became leader. Minus 1,067 2,694 Gideon became leader. Minus 1,027 2,734 Abimelech, son of Gideon, became leader. Minus 1,024 2,737 Tola, son of Pua, became leader. Minus 1,003 2,758 Jair, the Gileadite, became leader. Minus 982 2,779 Jephthah, Ha-Gileadi, became leader. Minus 969 2,792 Elon, Ha-Zebuluni, became leader. Minus 959 2,802 Athan ben Hillel became leader. Minus 951 2,810 Samson became leader. Minus 931 2,830 Eli the Cohen became leader. Minus 907 2,854 David was born. Minus 890 2,871 Samuel became leader. Kings and the First Holy Temple. Secular year Jewish year event in history. Minus 879 2,882 Saul was appointed king. Minus 877 2,884 David became king of Judah in Hebron. Minus 869 2,892 David became king of Israel in Jerusalem. Minus 837 2,924 Solomon became king. Minus 833 2,928 The building of the first Beit Hamikdash commenced. Minus 827 2,935 The first Beit Hamikdash was completed. Minus 797 2,964 Solomon died and his kingdom was divided. Minus 797 2,964 Rehoboam, son of Solomon, became king of Judah. Minus 797 2,964 Jeroboam ben Nebat became king over Israel. Minus 718 3,043 Elijah went up in a chariot of fire. Minus 677 3,084 Joash renovated the Beit Hamikdash. Minus 619 3,142 Isaiah began his prophecies. Minus 574 3,187 The first two of the 10 tribes were exiled. Minus 566 3,195 Another two of the 10 tribes were exiled. Minus 562 3,199 Hezekiah became king of Judah. Minus 556 3,205 The last of the 10 tribes were exiled. Minus 548 3,213 Sennacherib invaded the land of Judah and retreated. Minus 533 3,228 Manasseh, son of Hezekiah, became king of Judah. Minus 463 3,298 Jeremiah began his prophecies. Minus 458 3,303 Josiah renovated the Beit Hamikdash. Minus 442 3,319 Jerusalem was conquered. Jehoiakim was exiled. Minus 443,321 Shwagim burned the Book of Lamentations composed by Jeremiah. Minus 434 3,327 Jerusalem was conquered again and Jehoiakim was exiled. Minus 433,331 Jeremiah persisted in prophesying calamity. Minus 429 3,332 Ezekiel prophesied in exile. Minus 425 3,336 The final Babylonian siege of Jerusalem. Minus 423 3,338 The walls of Jerusalem were penetrated. Minus 423 3,338 The sacrifices ceased in the Beit Hamikdash. Minus 423 3,338 The first Beit Hamikdash was destroyed. Exile in Babylon. Secular year Jewish year event in history. Minus 423 3,339 Gedaliah ben Achikam was killed. Minus 421 3,340 Daniel interpreted Nebuchadnezzar dream. Minus 410 3,352 Ezekiel prophesied about the future Beit Hamikdash. Minus 372 3,389 Daniel read the writing on the wall. Minus 372 3,389 Daniel was thrown into the lion's den. Minus 371 3,390 Zerubbabel led the return to the land of Israel. Minus 373 3,391 building of second Beit Hamikdash commenced. Then halted. Minus 366 3,395 Akashvirosh II made his great banquet. Minus 362 3,399 Esther was taken to the palace. Minus 357 3,404 Esther took action against Haman's decree. Minus 355 3,406 Mordecai proclaimed the celebration of Purim. Minus 353 3,408 building of the second Beit Hamikdash resumed. Minus 349 3,412 the second Beit Hamikdash was completed. Building of the second Holy Temple. Secular year Jewish year event in history. Minus 348 3,413 Ezra led the second return to the land of Israel. Minus 335 3,426 Nehemiah returned to rebuild walls of Jerusalem. Minus 313 3,448 Ezra died. Minus 313 3,448 Simon the Zodiac met Alexander the Great. Minus 313 3,449 the Minyan Shtaro began. Greek cultural domination. Secular year Jewish year event in history. Minus 273 3,488 Simon the Zodiac died. Minus 246 3,515 72 elders translated the Torah into Greek, Septuagint. Minus 143,621 the revolt of Mattatyahu the Shashmonadai. Kingdom of Judea. Dynasty of the Shashmonadai. Secular year Jewish year event in history. Minus 139 3,622 Judah the Maccabee ruled. Minus 139 3,622 the second Beit Hamikdash was rededicated. Minus 138 3,623 Hanukkah was declared a festival. Minus 133 3,628 Judah the Maccabee was killed in battle. Minus 133 3,628 Yonanan, son of Mattatyahu, ruled. Minus 127 3,634 Shimon, son of Mattatyahu, ruled. Minus 119 3,642 Yohanan Hyrcanos, son of Shimon, ruled. Minus 93 3,668 Judah Aristobulus, son of Yochanan Hyrcanos, ruled. Minus 91 3,670 Alexander Yanai, son of Yochanan Hyrcanos, ruled. Minus 73 3,688 Queen Shalomzion, Salome Alexandra, wife of Alexander Yanai, ruled. Minus 65 3,696 Aristobulus II, son of Alexander Yanai, ruled/TD. Minus 61 3,700 the Romans gained control of Judea. Minus 61 3,700 Hyrcanos II, son of Alexander Yanai, ruled. Minus 43,721 Antigonus, son of Aristobulus II, ruled. Roman client kings and rulers, the Herodian dynasty. Secular year Jewish year event in history. Minus 36 3,725 Herod I ruled. Killing all the Shashmonadim. Minus 33 3,728 Hillel became the leader of the Torah scholars. Minus 19 3,742 Herod I began rebuilding the second Beit Hamikdash. Minus 11 3,750 renovation of the second Beit Hamikdash was completed. 1 3,761 Archelaus, son of Herod I, ruled. 8 3,768 Hillel died. 10 3,770 Archelaus was deposed by the Roman Emperor. 21 3,781 Agrippa I, grandson of Herod I, ruled. 28 3,788 the Sanhedrin moved from the second Beit Hamikdash. 44 3,804 Agrippa II, son of Agrippa I, ruled. 53,810 Rabban Gamliel I, son of Shimon, grandson of Hillel, died. 66 3,826 Vespasian arrived in Judea to reassert Roman authority. 69 3,829 the second Beit Hamikdash was destroyed. The Talmudic era. The Mishnah. Secular year Jewish year event in history. 74 3,834 Ar Yohanan ben Zakkai died. 86 3,846 the Sanhedrin moved from place to place, under Ar Gamliel II. 133 3,893 Badr fell, and the Bar Kokhba revolt ended in tragedy. 134 3,894 Judaism was banned, and Ar Akiva was imprisoned. 189 3,949 Ar Judah Hanasi completed the Mishnah around this time. The Talmudic era. The Gemara. Secular year Jewish year event in history. 219 3,979 Rav left the land of Israel and settled in Babylonia. 247 4007 Shmuel was the Talmudic authority in Babylonia. 254 4014 Ar Yohanan was the leading Talmudic authority. 294,050 R. Huna was the leading Talmudic authority. 298,4058 R. Yehuda was the leading Talmudic authority. 304,060 R. Kista was the leading Talmudic authority. 309,4069 Rabbah was the leading Talmudic authority. 321,4081 R. Yosef was the leading Talmudic authority. 325,4085 Abai was the leading Talmudic authority. 338,4098 Rabbah was the leading Talmudic authority. 359,4119 Hillel II, who established the calendar, became Nasi. 392,4152 R. Ashi was the leading Talmudic authority. 427,4187 R. Ashi died after the compilation of the Gemara. 475,4235 The Talmud was complete when Ravina II died. The Rabbanan. Secular year Jewish year event in history. 551,4311 Mar Sutra proclaimed Jewish self-rule in Babylonia. The Janine. Secular year Jewish year event in history. 589,4349 The Talmudic Academy of Pumbedita was reconstituted. 609,4369 The Talmudic Academy of Sira was reconstituted. 614,4374 The Persians conquered the land of Israel. 614,4374 The Jews were allowed to return to Jerusalem. 629,4389 The Byzantine Empire reconquered the land of Israel. 636,4396 Ar Yitzhak was the last Jaon of Mihardeh, Firas Shavar. 637,4397 The Arabs conquered the land of Israel. 645,4405 One of the attack on Hajanim was enacted at this time. 755,4515 Arakeh Jaon left Iraq for the land of Israel. 759,4519 Ar Yehuda became Jaon of Sira. 759,4519 The Halachot Gitalat, B.A. Hag, was written at this time. 788,4548 Another of the attack on Hajanim was enacted at this time. 858,4618 Aramrum, who wrote the Siddur, became Jaon of Sira. 928,4688 Rabbi Anusaadia was appointed Jaon of Sira. 955,4715 Four captives were ransomed at around this time. 968,4728 Ar Shera became Jaon of Pumbedita. 997,4757 Ar Hai became, the last, Jaon of Pumbedita. 1,038,4798 Ar Hai died. And the academies of Babylon declined. The early Rishonim, the Crusade massacres. Secular year Jewish year event in history. 1,044,800 Rabbi Anagersim Meir Hagolah died. 1,088 4,848 The Rif arrived in Spain from Morocco. 1,096 4,856 The Crusaders destroyed Jewish communities. 1,099 4,859 Jerusalem was captured by the Crusaders. 1,103 4,863 The Rif died. 1,105 4,865 Rashi died. And the era of the Tosafot began. 1,135 4,895 The Rambam, Maimonides, was born. 1,144 4,904 The first, recorded, blood libel took place. 1,147 4,907 The Crusaders attacked Jewish communities. 1,147 4,907 Rabbi Anutam was captured by the Crusaders. 1,148 4,908 The Rambams and the Radeks families left Cordova. 1,165 4,925 The Rambam visited the land of Israel. 1,171 4,931 Rabbi Anutam died. 1,175 4,935 The Rashbam died. 1,184 4,944 The young son of the Ri was killed. 1,187 4,948 Jews were allowed to return to Jerusalem. 1,189 4,949 Ar Yaakov Dorleans was killed in London. 1,194,950 Jews were massacred in England in the Third Crusade. 1,191 4,951 Rabbi David Kimchi, known as the Radak, wrote his commentary. 1,194 4,954 The Rambam, Nachmanides, was born. 1,198 4,959 The Aray Abid died. 1204 4965 The Rambam died. 1236 4996 Rampaging mobs massacred Jews in France. 1242 5002 A massive burning of the Talmud took place in Paris. 1244 5004 Jerusalem was sacked by Egyptians and Turks. 1252 5012 The Inquisition began to use torture. 1267 5027 The Ramban left Spain and settled in the land of Israel. 1270 5030 The Ramban died. 1286 5046 The Maharam Mir Rothenburg was imprisoned. 1290 5050 New works advanced the study of Kabbalah. 1290 5050 The era of the Tosafot concluded at around this time. Later Rishonim. Persecutions and expulsions. Secular year Jewish year event in history. 1290 5050 All Jews were expelled from England. 1293 5053 The Maharam Mir Rothenburg died in prison. 1298 5058 The Rindfleisch massacres began. 1298 5058 The author of the Mordecai and Hagahot Maimoniyot were killed. 1305 5065 The Rashba placed a limited ban on philosophy. 1305 5065 The Rosh and his son, the Tur, arrived in Spain. 1306 5066 All Jews were expelled from France. 1310 5070 The Rashba died. 1320 5080 Jews were massacred by the Pasteros Crusaders. 1327 5088 The Rosh died. 1336 5096 Jews of Germany were massacred by the Armleiter bands. 1338 5098 The Ralbag wrote his commentary on the Bible. 1349 5109 The Black Death massacres swept across Europe. 1367 5127 The Ran, Reivish, and other scholars in Spain were imprisoned. 1391 5151 Jews of Spain were massacred. Many were forced to convert. 1391 5151 The Reivish and Rashbats left Spain. 1394 5155 The final expulsion of Jews from France. 1413 5173 R. Yosef Albo was in a forced debate with Christians. 1421 5181 Jews in Austria were massacred in the Wiener Gezira. 1475 5235 The invention of printing was used for Jewish books. 1481 5241 The Inquisition was established in Spain. 1488 5248 R. Obadiah de Bertinora settled in Jerusalem. 1491 5251 Columbus consulted R. Abraham Zacuto for his travels. 1492 5252 All Jews were expelled from Spain and Sicily. The great scholars of the Shulchan Aruch and Torah Consolidation. Secular year Jewish year event in history. 1493 5253 R. Yitzhak Abarbanel arrived in Naples from Spain. 1496 5257 All Jews were expelled from Portugal. 1516 5276 The Ein Yaakov was printed. 1516 5276 The Turks, Ottoman Empire, conquered Eretz Yisrael. 1525 5285 R. Yosef Yasselman saved many Jews during the Peasants' War. 1553 5314 A mass burning of Jewish books took place in Rome. 1563 5323 The Shulchan Aruch was completed by R. Yosef Karo. 1570 5330 The Shulchan Aruch was published with supplements of Rama. 1572 5332 The Arizal died in Sfat. 1573 5333 The Maharal came to Prague. 1573 5334 The Maharshal died. 1575 5335 R. Yosef Karo died in Safat. 1599 5359 The Maharal returned to Prague again. 1614 5374 The Maharsha became rabbi in Lublin. 1616 5377 The Tosafot Yom Tov commentary was concluded. 1621 5382 The Shalom arrived in the land of Israel. 1629 5389 R. Yom Tov Lippmann Heller was imprisoned in Prague. 1640 5400 R. Yoel Sirks. The Bach. Died. 1646 5406 The Shach and Taz, on Shulchan Aruch, were printed. 1648 5408 Jews were massacred by Shmuel Maki's forces. Early Akaranim and East European massacres. Secular Year Jewish Year event in history. 1654 5414 The first Jews settled in New Amsterdam, New York. 1655 5415 Many Jews killed in Russian and Swedish invasions of Poland. 1656 5416 Jews were permitted to live in England. 1656 5416 Baruch Spinoza was excommunicated. 1673 5433 The Magen Avraham, on Shulchan Aruch, was completed. 1676 5437 Shabtai Tzvi died as a Muslim. 1689 5449 The Beit Shmuel, on the Shulchan Aruch, was printed. 1698 5458 The Baal Shem Tov was born. 1702 5463 The Nehai Yehoshua's family was killed in an explosion. 1712 5472 The Siftei Chachamim was arrested. 1724 5484 R. Yaakov Kulai, Liam Loizi, arrived in Constantinople. 1727 5487 The Mishnah Elimelech died. 1734 5494 Jews were massacred by the Haidamach bands. Akaranim and early Hasidim. Secular Year Jewish Year event in history. 1741 5501 The Or HaChaim arrived in the land of Israel. 1747 5507 R. Moshe Chaim Luzzatto, Ronkel, died in Akko, Acre. 1755 5510 R. Jonathan Nevescuds became rabbi in Hamburg. 1754 5515 R. Yechezkel Landau, known as the Noda by Yehuda, became rabbi in Prague. 1757 5518 The Frankists instigated mass burnings of the Talmud. 1759 5519 Frankists supported blood libel charges in public debate. 1765 5520 The Baal Shem Tov died. 1764 5524 The Council of Four Lands, known as the Va'ad Arba'aratzot, was discontinued. 1768 5528 Despite resistance, the Haidamachs massacre thousands. 1772 5532 The Maggid of Maziritsk died. 1782 5542 R. N. Adler and Chatam Sofer visited the Noda by Yehuda. 1786 5546 R. Elimelech of Lizinsk died. 1791 5551 The Pale of Settlement was established in Russia. 1793 5553 Jews suffered in Reign of Terror of French Revolution. 1797 5558 The Vilna Gaon died. 1798 5559 The Baal HaTanya was released from first imprisonment. 1799 5559 Napoleon led an army expedition through the land of Israel. 1806 5566 The Jidah, Bar Haim Yosef David Ajalai, died. 1806 5566 The Chatam Sofer became rabbi in Pressburg. 1809 5570 R. Levi Yitzhak of Berdichev died. 1810 5571 R. Nachman of Breslov died. 1814 5574 R. Akiva Bager became rabbi in Posen. 1814 5575 Koznitzer Megid and Yehudi of Peshiska. Both died. 1815 5575 Chose of Lublin and R. Mendel of Rimanov both died. 1819 5579 Anti-Jewish riots spread throughout Germany. 1827 5587 Russia began conscripting Jewish children to the army. 1840 5600 R. Yisrael of Ruzin was released from imprisonment. Later Akaranim and the Changing Society. Secular Year Jewish Year event in history. 1843 5603 The Tsamasht Sadek of Lubavitch was repeatedly arrested in Russia. 1846 5606 Sir Moshe Montefiore visited Russia to help local Jews. 1848 5609 R. Yisrael Salinger left Vilna. 1851 5611 R. Shimshon Raphael Hirsch became rabbi in Frankfurt am Main. 1859 5619 R. Menachem Mendel of Kotsk died. 1864 5624 The Malvin was imprisoned, and then expelled from Romania. 1866 5626 Chedushay Harem, Tiferet Shlomo, and Tsamasht Sadek died. 1873 5633 The Chafetz Chaim was published. 1874 5634 The Minshat Chinuch died. 1878 5638 Petah Tikva agricultural settlement was established. 1881 5641 Many Jews began leaving Russia after a wave of pogroms. 1886 5646 R. Shlomo Gans Fried, author of Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, died. 1892 5652 R. Haim Brisker became rabbi in Brisk. 1905 5665 The Sfat Emet died. 1905 5665 Many Jews were killed in official Russian pogroms. 1911 5671 Chazonish was published. 1914 5674 Over 500,000 Jewish soldiers fought in World War I. 1918 5678 Over 60,000 Jews were killed during the Russian Revolution. 1923 5684 The Daf Hayomi study cycle commenced. 1927 5687 The 6th Lubavitch Rebbe was released from Soviet prison. 1938 5699 Jews were attacked in the Kristallnacht pogroms in Germany. The Holocaust. Secular Year Jewish Year event in history. 1939 5699 Germany started World War II. And mass killing of Jews. 1941 5701 Nazi Germany unexpectedly invaded Russia. 1941 5701 200,000 Jews were killed at Babi Yar and Ponary. 1942 5702 400,000 Jews of Warsaw were sent to death camps. 1943 5703 Nazi Germany experienced massive losses in the Battle of Stalingrad. 1943 5703 The remaining Jews in Warsaw staged a massive uprising. 1943 5703 Jewish uprisings at Treblinka, Sobibor, and Bialystok. 1943 5703 The Danish people quietly rescued 93% of their Jews to safety. 1944 5704 300,000 Hungarian Jews were killed in 3 months. 1944 5705 Uprising in Auschwitz death camp just before freedom. 1945 5705 Nazi Germany was conquered. And World War II ended. 1945 5705 6 million Jews were killed by the Nazis during the war. The modern state of Israel. Secular Year Jewish Year event in history. 1947 5707 Publication of the Talmud Encyclopedia was commenced. 1947 5708 The United Nations divided Israel. 1947 5708 Arabs attacked Israel to gain territory. 1948 5708 The State of Israel was established. 1948 5708 Israel was invaded by many Arab countries. 1949 5709 The War of Independence in Israel ended. 1955 5710 All Jews left the ancient Jewish community of Iraq. 1955 5710 Almost all Jews of Yemen emigrated to Israel. 1951 5711 The Lubavitch Rebbe accepts the mantle of leadership. 1956 5717 Jewish forces invaded Egypt and conquered the Sinai Desert. 1967 5727 The Lubavitch Rebbe established the Tefillin campaign. 1967 5727 Jerusalem reunited under Jewish rule in the Six-Day War. 1973 5734 2,500 Jewish soldiers were killed in the Yom Kippur War. 1974 5734 The Lubavitch Rebbe established the Shabbat Candle campaign. 1982 5742 massive enemy arsenals were discovered in Lebanon. 1987 5746 The first international conference of Chabad Lubavitch emissaries. 1993 5753 A secret agreement signed in Oslo. 1994 5754 The Lubavitcher passed away. 2008 5767 Deadly terrorist attack at the Chabad House in Mumbai, India, kill 6. 2020 5780 Israel signed Abraham Accords, normalizing relations with UAE and Bahrain, soon followed by Sudan and Morocco.
Constructed as a literal house for the Israelite god, the temple served as the dwelling place for the divine on earth. Its meticulous design, its luxurious gold and silver implements, and the famous cedars of Lebanon, while honestly not holding much of a candle to Egyptian and Babylonian shrines, was still a marvel of ancient Levant. Indeed, it was testimony to the early state-building efforts on the part of the Israelite polity. Yet, doom would come to that very polity in the 6th century BCE. The Temple of Solomon would be razed, and the Judean elite sent into generations of Babylonian captivity. But, almost as soon as it was destroyed, questions and then legends about the fate of the sacred temple implements, the vessels, and the fabulous decor began to swirl in the imagination. Were these sacred artifacts totally looted or destroyed? that some of them, especially famous Aron HaBrit, the Ark of the Covenant, didn't somehow survive the ransacking violence and subsequent conflagration. In this episode, I want to explore some of the earliest accounts and legends about the fate of the sacred implements and vessels from Solomon's temple, especially focusing on a legendary account in the Masechet Kelim, or the Treatise on Vessels. If you're interested in magic, hermetic philosophy, alchemy, Kabbalah, or the history of the occult, make sure to subscribe and check out my other content here on YouTube and various topics of esotericism, including curated playlists. Also, if you want to support this work of providing accessible, scholarly, and free content on topics of esotericism here on YouTube, free, I hope you consider supporting my work on my Patreon with a one-time donation or with the super thanks option below the video. Thank you very much for considering supporting the channel and the project of making Esoterica available. But now, let's turn to the scriptures and legends detailing the fate of the sacred artifacts of Solomon's temple in Jerusalem. I'm Dr. Justin Sledge, and welcome to Esoterica, where we explore the arcane in history, philosophy, religion. The Temple of Solomon was likely a local shrine for the primitive polity surrounding it. It was though enhanced through the financing brought on by the emergence of ancient Israel as a quasi-centralized organized state actor. While no original evidence of the original shrine exists, that site has been continuously raised and resettled for millennia now, though I do think that Tel Arad Ascapon 18, or the House of Yahweh Ascapon, is probably an exception and refers to the Jerusalem temple, and very little in the way of controlled digs have ever been performed in that area. Mainstream historical consensus attests to the existence of the shrine, though the low chronology folks, Finkelstein, will date it to several centuries after the more traditional date of its construction, sometime in the late 10th century BCE, though certainly a central Jerusalem shrine did exist and was sacked in the 6th century BCE. Of course, that was all brought on after Babylonian vassal state of Judea attended a series of failed insurrections backed by Egyptians, thus following a 30-month siege of the city. The Babylonian king Nabuchodonosor II, Nebuchadnezzar, razed the city and the surrounding areas. That archaeological evidence, however, is very strongly contested, including the Yahweh shrine perched atop the rocky mountain Zion. It's very likely that all of that stuff was historically destroyed. Accounts of the carnage can be found in 2 Kings 25, 1-17, and 2 Chronicles 36:18, where we learn that the shrine was systematically looted, with the objects and precious metals there, obviously, the targets. Sadly, while an earlier siege of the city is recorded in the Nebuchadnezzar Chronicle, no such mention was made of this final siege and assault without Babylonian records. However, at least some of those spoils were taken as trophies to Babylon, with some of those gold and silver objects being apparently returned by the Persian king Cyrus the Great, the only person, by the way, ever called a Messiah in the entire Bible. Those objects were said to be given to Ezra as part of his settlement of the Judean homeland as part of the Persian Empire and the polity of Yahud. Conspicuously missing from that list in Ezra, however, is the Ark of the Covenant. In fact, the only reference to the fate of the Ark is to be found in a passing reference in the Hebrew Bible in the prophet Jeremiah, who, for what it's worth, actually argued that the Judeans should have never rebelled against the Babylonians and should have never teamed up with the Egyptians in the first place, where we're told that Yahweh worship in terms of the Ark will Lo Yomru ad Aaron Kut Yahweh, V'lo Ya'ale Ale, V'lo Yizkuru Lo, V'lo Yifkudo, V'lo Ya'aseh Lord. That people will no longer speak of the Ark of the Covenant of Yahweh. They'll not bring it to mind. They won't even make a mention of it, or they won't miss it or long for it, and they're not going to make another one. That is the closest account we have to an eyewitness for the destruction of the Solomonic Temple. Basically testifies that the Ark was lost. There won't be another one missed. I suspect that from the Babylonian perspective, there were at least two reasons to destroy the Ark of the Covenant. First, a wooden box papered over with gold containing broken stones, a stick, and a pot would have not much to impress the worshippers of Marduk or Nabu with their giant city of Babylon and their ziggurats. I suspect they just dumped that stuff out as they were torching the place and happily melted down the Ark of the Covenant. Secondly, insofar as the temple and the box, the Ark of the Covenant represented the power of the Judahite God, raising it all to the ground would have been the rational thing to do while basically putting down a series of vassal insurrections. It clearly sends the message, you and your gods are powerless. I mean, just imagine the last thing that you see before being dragged into exile is your homeland invaded, your capital city torched, and atop it all, the shrine of your national god being looted before being reduced to ashes. I suspect that made an impression on the future would-be insurgents. Though, it should be noted that the Babylonian siege is not the first time the Jerusalem temple was said to have been looted. Early in the history of the shrine, Sheshonk I is said to have looted it himself, and a few generations later, King Joash of the Israelite kingdom to the north is said to have done the same. The Israelite king looted the Jerusalem temple. We're great friends. Later, Judahite kings themselves would raid the temple and its treasuries, mostly to bribe or placate other rulers like the Assyrians, King Lapalus IV. Even the ever-praised Hezekiah tried to buy off Sennacherib by stripping the stairs of the temple of their gold, giving it to him. So if the Ark wasn't legendary, and I suspect that it probably was a kind of portable Yahweh shrine with a distinct accompanying lore that was brought to Jerusalem as part of Josiah's, let's call it the Inquisition of Josiah, the centralizing of geopolitics with the narratives about the Ark eventually being included into the larger Israelite myth history. But again, assuming that it wasn't totally legendary, there were clearly pre-Babylonian instances where it could have been seized and destroyed. But at some level, I think that Jeremiah can be trusted. It was certainly lost either in one of the multiple lootings of the temple prior or in the destruction brought by the Babylonian siege of 586-587 BCE. I don't think it survived. Of course, the simple reality of the historical horror of war has never stopped the growth of legends. Probably what is needed in the aftermath of said horror is, well, hope, and legends give people hope. To add to that hope, recall that the Babylonian siege did last about 2.5 years, plenty of time to hide things, at least within the caverns beneath the city of Jerusalem. And aside from the surviving temple items which were said to have been given to Ezra by the Messianic King Cyrus, the rest would happily survive in legends. By the composition of the Second Maccabees in the 1st century BCE, mind that's 500 years after the destruction of the Solomonic Temple, if we're keeping times here, we are told that the temple fire itself had been preserved as naphtha and was used to inaugurate the new temple by Nehemiah. Later medieval legends have Ezra doing that exact task. That's probably just a switcheroo in the Jewish lore. Further, we're actually told that Jeremiah spirited away the Mishkan, the Ark, and the altar of incense into a cave, but the location of that cave would not be revealed until the end of days. Though, again, this is all a bit ironic considering what is actually written in the book of Jeremiah about the seeming fate and future of the Ark. Jeremiah says, "It's gone, won't be missed." By about 100 of the common era items from the temple would be now supernaturally rescued in the literature as well. Narrative texts like Second Baruch, angels would descend upon Jerusalem following its encirclement by the Babylonians, thus rescuing the major elements of the temple service, which would be later swallowed up by the earth, and again, they would be repeated until the end of days. Further texts have Jeremiah and Scribe Baruch secretly throw objects away within the earth somehow, or in some way miraculously placing them into the massive cornerstone of the temple before casting the golden keys of the temple, or in some texts the golden headband the high priest wears, the one that's inscribed with the divine name Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh. They throw them into the sun, and the sun keeps them for safekeeping until the coming days of the Messiah. In legends, later still, now by the 5th or 6th centuries of the Common Era, the prophet Habakkuk is said to have predicted the coming destruction of the temple, and that angels would have actually descended and taken the pillars of the temple into heaven, again for safekeeping until the end of days. Ancient rabbinical literature also preserves several narratives about the fate of various temple artifacts, especially the Ark of the Covenant. And the most famous of those legends, righteous King Josiah has the Levites hide the Ark of the Covenant within the confines of the temple precincts itself. It's buried somewhere within the temple. And one story, an explanation is actually given why certain elite families, including the family of the high priest, would perform an additional prostration during the temple service in the direction of the storehouse of the temple firewood of all things. Well, why? Because all those people shared an ancestral memory of the ark existed there in that direction. In fact, in the most Dungeons and Dragons episode of all of these stories, Righteous told there was a certain priest who was going about his priestly duties, and noticed that one of the paving stones of the temple was slightly different from all those around it. It appeared just so slightly elevated compared to the other temple stones there on the pavement, as if it had been removed and put back into place. It dawned on the priest of this was the secret chamber where the Ark of the Covenant had been hidden, and before he could relate the exact location of that stone to a fellow priest, his soul left his body. That seems to have struck him down, and thus keeping the exact location safe. You think the Tomb of Horrors is hard? Try the Tomb of Horror. What these legends have in common, I think, from Jeremiah, Josiah, or even the angels hiding these items away for the coming final messianic days of redemption, is that they represent the possibility of theological continuity. That, despite all appearances, Babylonian siege of 586-587 wasn't complete. In fact, as the legends grow through time, they grow bigger and bigger, more and more of Solomon's temple is saved in the process. In later legends, even musical instruments, wooden games, even the interior stonework is miraculously preserved. This all has the effect, in an important way, that the entirety of the temple eventually comes to be saved by prophetic insight, righteous foresight, or divine revelation, or just angelic intervention as these legends grow and grow and grow. Thus, by the time the Babylonians reached the defenses of the city, these legends have it, there was basically not much left of Solomon's temple left to destroy, perhaps just an outer shell of stone with all the divine riches.
Big dog. What's up, big man?
Hello, how are you?
I'm well, thank God. How are you?
I am good. I'm in job right now
Why are you on the phone at your job?
because we have free time.
Oh, okay. Big
So how was the episode? Good? Did you watch it?
big dog. I've been busy. I did look though.
Okay.
I did look at it, and I have a question.
What is wrong?
I don't know if it's wrong. I'm just it looks good. I mean, I'm not saying it doesn't. Do you like
Okay.
this job, by the way?
What?
Do you like this job?
Another question, please.
Do you like?
Find that question.
Do you like this job?
50-50.
Well, they're giving you free time. That's good.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm going to live podcast, and I'm going to your channel, and why didn't you use the? Yeah, dude, you fucked up. I gave you all of the descriptions of what they needed to be.
Yes, but description is too much for YouTube. It's too much words.
How many words can you have?
5,000 on it, and you have like almost like 10,000.
Uh, words or characters?
Yeah, characters. Sorry.
Okay,
Sorry.
I'm not so worried about that. The title is wrong. Like we put together, there are 100 titles for you. You just copy and paste them. It has a smiley face.
Yeah, I'm going to change it.
Yeah, I mean, like people don't know this is a live podcast special edition. They don't know I'm in it. They don't know that, like it's just kind of generic. I'm not saying it's bad, but um, and then we did a thing like like I'm looking um the it doesn't give a description. Like literally all you have to do in that chart that I gave you is copy column 3, put it in ChatGPT, copy column 4, put it in ChatGPT, and you're going to get a 5,000 character description. The description
Yeah.
that I'm seeing that you put. Oh wait, hold on. I'm not. You're. I'm not. You do have it. It's at the bottom. Um. Okay. So I would say you just have to change the title. That's all.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Um. Let me. Your link tree. I'm just checking your link tree to make sure it's right. Your link tree is
I need
good.
to. I need to update my link tree
Yeah.
today.
Your link tree. You have a lot more content, but it's not showing.
Yeah.
It's okay though. All you need to do is change the title and
Mm-hmm.
and then update your link tree. And aside from that, it looks pretty good. Um,
Thank you.
let me. I'm gonna test it. I'm gonna go to that document that we created together, and I'm gonna make sure if I put something in from that document. If I put something in from that document, I just want to make sure that we get a similar answer. It doesn't have to be exactly the same, but
Yeah.
we will take a look. And I understand that the one that I sent you, the description that I sent you, is too long. That's why I said just go to the. That's why we made that document. But I understand you were like maybe it wasn't that clear. Um, let's see here. Timeline project. Okay. Open and um, okay. So I take future timeline and I'm gonna put it the thing in and
Oh, I'm
yeah. That's basically correct. I mean, like what you have there is basically correct. Um, so Um, looking at it, it's good. Just change the title, and I think you'll be okay.
Okay, can you send me the title?
No, it's in the timeline project.
Okay, yeah. Okay. Okay.
It's literally
Okay, I'm not gonna.
it's literally all you have to
Okay,
do
then.
is copy and paste it. And I think I made it 99 characters. If it's too long for whatever reason, I mean, literally, it's like I think you can have 100 characters and it's 99. So it should be just copy and paste, and it's perfect. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yeah. Can you repost that YouTube?
I already,
Yeah. Okay. Fuck that. Twitter.
I already did.
You repost that?
Why don't you check your Twitter?
Yo, you did. Thanks.
Okay. How much more time do you have at work?
I don't know. Like 3 hours. I don't know.
Okay. Well, what are you doing?
I am doing some movements, some things.
You're moving stuff?
Yeah. But like that title, I'm gonna need to have new post on Twitter, because if I change the title on YouTube, it's not going to change title on Twitter.
Yeah, Twitter's fine. Yeah, it will. It's an embedded link, so it should.
No. I tried
Okay,
times.
okay, no big deal. Change it on YouTube, and
Mm-hmm.
um,
So like on Twitter is doesn't matter.
no, it doesn't. Just change it on YouTube.
Okay. I am sorry for that
Don't
title.
don't apologize. It's no big deal. You're okay. I'm not. I'm not mad or anything, and you worked really hard on this, so you should be commended. Good job.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Should I go back to school?
No, you can learn everything that you need on the internet nowadays.
I know, but school is like safe place. School is like something safe.
Yeah, you don't need to
This
go.
life is not.
It's a waste of time nowadays. It's easy, but you don't need it. If this were 20 years ago and you didn't have everything on the internet, maybe, but you don't need it now. There's something that you want, go get a certification. Now you're saying, should I get a certification? Absolutely.
So I'm going to change it, that title
Okay.
today, and I hope you will be happy with me. And yeah.
Okay. I'm already happy with you.
But more happy, more.
Well, I'm not gonna fly to Chechnya and give you a hug, but I'm happy with you.
um, And sometimes I want to go back to school just because it's like safe and it's, you know what I mean.
Yeah, you're too old for that now. Now, if you want, go get a certification.
We can study in my country. We can study to 26. So I'm not old.
Yeah, you are. You should be making money. If you're in school, you're not making any money. These are prime years for you to be advancing in your career. You have to think, okay, if I get a career and I'm 22 years old, I'm going to be, and let's say you like you'll advance. If you get skills and you get certifications, by the time you're 50, let's say you had to stay in that job, you'll be 4 years ahead of where you were with a college degree. And many places, even in Europe, will just pay for you to go to college while you have a job.
Mm-hmm.
You just want to take the easy route, and I understand. It's like your parents will be off your back because they'll be like, well, he's getting a degree and you won't have to worry so much about work and stuff, but uh, you're you're going to be wasting your time. And what do you want a degree in? What you want it in business? Get a certification. You want it in tech? Get a certification. Certifications are far cheaper and more advantageous in the workplace. I have I have degrees, and the place doesn't really care so long as I can do the job. And um, like the positions which I've had, you've had to have a college degree, and I have one. But uh, aside from that, that's all they cared about. After that, they want to make sure that you can do the job. And many places will say you need to have a college degree or equivalent experience. A lot of places say equivalent experience. And if they're willing to say equivalent experience, then you can easily get that, or you can easily get the job. You have equivalent experience. You're just being lazy, and that's okay. You recognize that going to school is a lazy way to do it. If you're like, Rabbi, I want to spend the amount of time that I would spend going to school, but I want to get a certification, absolutely. You can get certifications for like $50 American, and they will allow you to make huge amounts of money in the future. Like for $50. If you want the website, it's udemy.com. Udemy. You just go to udemy.com. They give free some free classes, but generally like you can take the best courses in the world, and then you just have to take the test, and once you take the test, you're certified.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, you're here. Yeah, I think I lost you.
Okay, so what I just said was go to a website, udemy.com, udemy.com, and find something that you want. Like the one that I always tell people to do is become a Salesforce manager. You make $120,000, and all you need is a certification, which means all you have to do is pass the test. They don't care about you having a degree. They don't care about any of that. All you have to do is pass the test, and it's not that hard. So what you do is you continue working so that you can pay for the certifications and pay for the tests, and then you take the test, and within a year or two, you're going to be making $120,000.
So I have another question. So if I change the title, this episode will be best.
Um, yeah, it'll be good. I'd be happy with it.
So like You don't care that on Twitter is going to be that bad title.
It's not a bad title anyway. It's fine.
Okay.
YouTube is what matters, and here's why. It tells your users who's in it, or it tells your viewers who's in it. It tells them that this is a special edition. It's a different kind of thing. And then the other stuff that you say is like futurology, technology. That's all in the description, so they can get all that.
Mhm. So I don't need to change. I don't need to do it again, and again that Twitter
No, you don't have to delete the.
post.
No, it's fine. I reposted it. It's good.
Then
And if you wonder, Rabbi, why isn't anybody watching this one? Well, you only have 100 subscribers anyway, and it's much longer than the normal one. This one again is for the future, so don't worry. Like, oh, only 5 people have watched it. It's an hour long. It's long, so many people are gonna say, I don't have time to do that right now. But the people who will are the people who eventually search up something like they're going to be interested in like mapping of the oceans, and in the future episodes that we will have something in the description that says future that says mapping of the oceans, and they'll get into that and they'll be like, wow, this is really interesting, I wonder what else is in here, and they'll find the playlist, and then they'll just start at the top of the playlist and work their way down, and they'll keep it on for hours and hours. Like my playlist, I literally, Tony, watch playlists all day long, and I don't even pay attention to them. But guess what? That means I'm watching videos in their entirety. Sometimes I fall asleep during the videos. That means they're getting like 8 hours of video watch. That's really important for YouTube.
Mhm.
And that's what you want. Like, let me put it to you this way: the playlists are where it's at when you want people who are watching your content for long periods of time. Most people will just click on your video and be like, oh, okay, and they'll click on something else. But if you can get somebody who just sits there and watches a playlist, you're going to get hundreds of hours of views from people.
True. Amazing.
But if you don't have the,
So yes,
if I were you, I'd have a lot of different playlists. I would have a UFC playlist.
I have
Okay, good. I would have
enough.
a self improvement playlist. You could put our videos, our 4 videos, under a playlist. Just whatever it is. The more playlists, the better, because then there's a much better chance that somebody's going to watch 4 or 5 of your videos as opposed to just one.
Yeah, I will going to do playlist when I back home. Okay, so I will go.
Okay.
I will go.
When
I
you're
will gonna change the title and I will be back.
absolutely, you want to do I don't know if you want to, but you want to do another episode later today?
Yeah, I will text you. Okay.
No, you won't. You just come in here. Just tell me.
Okay. Okay. So
Excellent.
I talk to you soon.
All right. Best wishes with work. Take care. Good job.
Times for people caught in the horror of forced exile, for millennia forced exile. Such legends must have had a powerful psychological effect. The inspiring power of not just hope, but a hope joined by a final apocalyptic victory in which the Messiah paves the way to future redemption by unveiling again the glory of the past divine service and the ancestral temple of Solomon. It is a forward-looking, backwards-looking hope unified in one vision of redemption. Perhaps no text better combines all of these elements into one narrative than the Masechet Kelim, or the treatise on the vessels. This legendary text, as mysterious as it is brief, purports to record the location where the sacred vessels and artifacts of the Solomonic Temple were hidden. The text survives in 2 rather different recensions, the first appearing as late in a printed form as the 17th century, and the other one is, if you not, on 2 inscribed marble plaques as an addendum to the entire book of Ezekiel, Also on marble plaques that was actually probably housed in the tomb shrine of the prophet Ethiopia, Iraq. The 17th century version claims to be based on much, much earlier manuscripts, and the marble plaque edition is the two plaques that comprise the trees on the vessels. Well, they've gone missing because, of course, they were actually the whole collection of 68 were taken from Iraq to Beirut, and then they were smuggled into Israel in the 1950s. The 66 plaques upon which the book of Ezekiel are written can be found at the Yad Ben-Zvi Institute in Jerusalem if you want to see those. And there's no consensus on the age of those plaques, by the way. According to the British Museum, the plaques could be anywhere between 300 to 2,000 years old, though some experts date the script to the 7th or 8th century CE, which makes some sense given what we know about the internal evidence of the text. That also indicates a pretty similar date, given the text doesn't refer to narratives later than the Babylonian Talmud, which was composed or redacted rather around 500 or 600 of the Common Era. Though the text does mention a city called Baghdad, which might push that date a few centuries later, though at this point the best range for scholars to give on when the trees of vessels was produced was sometime between, late antiquity and the 17th century period when it was first attested. The two recensions as they exist now consist of a legendary narrative where kings, prophets, and Levites, with some angels, of course, including some deities like Michael and Gabriel, but also lesser-known angels like Shamshiel and Sariel, hide virtually the entirety of the Solomonic temple treasures in various locales in Israel, Jerusalem more specifically, and also in Babylon before inscribing those locations on a bronze tablet. That bronze tablet was the one. These treasures are heavily exaggerated in scale and number. There are tens of thousands of vestments and lampstands reported in this text, and the origin of many of these treasures is also rather legendary. Some of them are said to be taken from the gold found in the Garden of Eden, jewels that are actually hewn from Mount Sinai by Moses himself, and even some gems placed into musical instruments brought to Solomon by different kinds of demons. The text also appears to be an accumulation of previous legends kind of stitched together somewhat haphazardly, with a few of the treasures like the silver horns actually mentioned a couple of different times and a couple of different locations. While the Hebrew Bible is the main source for the list of the items to be found in the text, all of the kit of the Mishkan and Tabernacle, the golden table, the ark, the incense, altars, the shovels and pans, many additions and bases. These are all gold, silver, and bronze. Numerous vestments of the priests and the high priests, and various kinds of jewels and gems. Some of them actually taken from the heavenly pavement, musical instruments. There's even fine stone from the interior of the temple, and precious wood, and just massive caches of gold and silver, even a couple of magical trees, which are composed of blood red Tarbaim gold, which actually produces further golden fruit. So that's gold trees that make gold fruit. Really, some of these items are awesomely legendary, and while the locations of their hiding places are somewhat revealed in the trees of the vessels, such as at Mount Carmel, perhaps in caves near Jerusalem, or in various locations in Babylon, the text does make it abundantly clear that none of these treasures will be found again until they are divinely revealed at the time of the final messianic redemption. So, you shouldn't think of Masechet Kelim as a kind of treasure map, so much as a treasure litany in praise of the once and future service of the Jerusalem temple. For what it's worth, similar treasure temple litanies are also known from the ancient world, the most famous one being the one produced around 99 BCE for the Athena temple at Lindos. Interestingly enough, the Lindos testimony also testifies to a temple that was destroyed by fire and rebuilt, with its glories composed on permanent materials like stone and bronze. Though the marble plaque recension does have the trees originally composed on pure lambskin. Of course, the most obvious comparison to the treatise on the vessels, especially that we are told that it was written originally on a tablet of bronze, is the copper scroll found in Cave 3, the furthest from the Qumran settlement in 1952 as part of the larger cache of what we now know as the Dead Sea Scrolls. This scroll, made in copper was cut into longitudinal strips in 1956, revealing a similar kind of treasure map-like text. The scroll details, cryptically of course, the location of 64 different caches of gold, silver, priestly objects. There's even another copy of the copper scroll. This comes out to roughly 65 tons of silver and 26 tons of gold. The text. It's written in Hebrew, though there are weird Greek letters appearing at some of the locations for reasons that are, treasure map cryptic stuff. There are doubts if this treasure really was ever real or how it ever came to be. Theories abound here from it was the Second Temple treasury pulled together before it was destroyed. It was the resources of the Yachad or the Nassim Qumran community itself. It could have been treasured from the period of the Bar Kokhba revolt in 132-135 or something else entirely. Although it does likely that the treasure wasn't real, I'll go to all the links of writing it down on punched copper of all things, but so far, none of the treasure of the copper scroll has been found, at least publicly found, with the possible exception of the discoveries at Nachal Heber of some artifacts from the Bar Kokhba era. Though Masechet Kelim and the copper scroll share another odd thing in common. They both mention a strangely similar hiding place for some of these treasures, a certain Kochlit in the copper scroll and Ein Kotel or Ein Kotel in the treaties, somewhere near Mount Carmel. In fact, in the copper scroll, the location is actually the site of a more detailed treasure scroll, making it the central vector for anyone trying to seek out the entirety of the treasures described in the copper scroll text. Though it's also worth noting that the Talmud also mentions a place such as Kochalit as being somewhere out in the Transjordan. Though if these are all the same place, legendary or otherwise, it's not clear, but it's a conspicuous parallel just the same, despite the time gap between the two texts. Recall that the treatise is describing Solomonic treasures, the copper scroll, perhaps treasures from a nearly millennium later period, but who knows? Again, one of those moments where the legend and the lore line up just enough where it's hard not to hold out hope, at least for us Phillies. Or hopefully it's just a legendary byword for where treasure is, like, the word El Dorado as a location we now use for a long-lost place that won't ever be found that's full of elaborate riches. Masechet Kelim, or the treaties and the vessels, along with all the early lore of the Solomonic temple treasure, has fired the imagination. Fired the ancient imagination. Of course, it would also fire the medieval imagination, especially in texts like the Ethiopian national and religious epic, the Kafir Nagast. History, channel level quality claims that the Templars found the Ark of the Covenant. They didn't. And epic levels of complete insanity with the early 20th century British Israelists to permanent damage to the Bill of Tara in Ireland for the Ark of the Covenant 60th century. All topics for another day. If you want to read the Masechet Kelim or the treaties and the vessels for yourself, check it out in the English translation by De Villa in the extended edition of the Old Testament Pseudepigrapha, which contains all manner of wonderful material. Also, De Villa's blog, Paleo-Judaica, is absolutely fantastic. I read it as fast as he updates it, so you should subscribe to his blog as well. I'm sure I'm going to circle back to the Copper Scroll with the lost treasures of the Second Temple, which we have a pretty good historical reason may have well survived into late antiquity, along with at least an episode on the Kafir Nagast and something as well. Also, I want to do an entire episode on various legendary and magical objects said to have been owned by Solomon, like his famous ring. But until then, I'm Dr. Justin Sledge, and if you find Solomonic temple treasure because of this episode, call me. Seriously, call me. Also, thanks for watching Esoterica, where we explore the arcane history, philosophy. early 1666, the long-awaited Jewish Messiah was poised to overthrow the Sultan of the Ottoman Empire, cross Sabachyan River, and return astride a lion, leading an army composed of the 10 lost tribes of Israel. He would wed the daughter of Moses the prophet and gather the exiles. The nations of the world would bow before him, and the third temple in Jerusalem would be built, inaugurating the Messianic age. The dead would be resurrected, and as the years pass, the Messiah will become so spiritually elevated that both he and the world he redeemed would be utterly transformed, becoming wholly spiritual and united again in perfect harmony with the divine. Unknown numbers, perhaps the majority of the world's Jews from Yemen to Holland and distant Brazil, were prepared to return to Israel. Prayer books were already printed proclaiming the King Messiah. New religious festivals were developing, and the day of fasting and sorrow, the 9th of Av, had already been transformed into a day of ecstatic joy. And on September 16th, 1666, 356 years ago to the date of this episode being released, the King Messiah, faced with the threat of conversion or excruciating execution, apostatized. Amurad, the King Messiah Shabbatai Tzvi, had become Aziz Mehmed Effendi, royal doorkeeper. For most, Messianic fervor turned to horror and embarrassed disillusionment. But for a few most loyal to this Kabbalistic Messiah, his apostasy was simply a new act in the very arc of redemption itself. And for nearly 4 centuries now, that tiny underground group, or the Maimonim, the believers, have held their secret hope alive that an occulted, even divinized Shabbatai Tzvi will return to bring with him the final redemption. The historical events of that feverish year of Messianic expectation from Rosh Hashanah of 1665 to September 16, 1666 are perhaps amongst the perplexing in Jewish history. Just how did all this happen? And of course, there's no simple answer to that question. But in this episode, I want to explore the more esoteric dimension of the Messianic appeal of that period. The Kabbalistic arguments for Shabbatai Tzvi's claim to have been the King Messiah. By exploring the writings of his chief theoretician, prophet, and, PR guy, Nathan of Gaza, we can see how Lurianic Kabbalah was marshaled, but also deeply transformed to underwrite these Messianic claims, including Shabbatai's bizarre behavior, blasphemous behavior, and even the heretical and antinomian turns the movement would eventually take. Let's explore the Kabbalistic theology of the heretic Messiah. If you're interested in the history of magic, Hermetic philosophy, alchemy, Kabbalah, or the academic study of the occult, make sure to subscribe and check out my other content on topics in esotericism, including many different kinds of curated playlists. Also, if you want to support this work, providing accessible, scholarly, conspiracy theory free content on topics of esotericism here on YouTube, I'd hope you consider supporting my work on Patreon, or the one-time donation, or with the cool super thanks option that you now have down there below the video. But now, let's turn to the origins of creation, of evil itself, and how the soul of the Messiah plunged into the abyss of pure evil, the realm of the Klipot, would eventually emerge to redeem all of reality itself. The theology of the heretic Messiah, Shabbatai Tzvi. I'm Dr. Justin Sledge, and welcome to Esoterica, where we explore the arcane in history, philosophy, and religion. Now, to be sure, this episode is not meant to be a primer on Shabbatai Tzvi or the Messianic movement during and after his life. I'm going to assume some basic familiarity with all of that. After all, this channel, Esoterica, isn't meant really to be introductory level content most of the time. But if you do want a really solid academic refresher on Shabbatai Tzvi and the Messianic movement that he inspired, Religion for Breakfast has a great episode on just that topic, and I'd highly recommend checking it out. Also, I have to do this. I'd warn against 90% of the information on Shabbatai Tzvi and the Messianic movement left in its wake on the internet. It's awash with, let's call them valueless anti-Semitic internet grifters whose analysis will somehow make you stupider having watched it. I've actually included a bibliographic list of reliable scholarship in the description if you want to really dig into the topic of Shabbatai Tzvi or Frankism or what have you. Now, we're also going to be exploring some pretty technical elements in the Lurianic Kabbalah as well, so you might also want to review that before we get going. Again, this channel ain't called Esoterica for nothing. Prior to Shabbatai Tzvi's early proclamation of himself as the Messiah, dating to around 1648 or so, and Nathan's technical Kabbalistic defense of such claims composed in the mid-1660s, both of these guys had profound mystical insights independent of one another. Shabbatai, having learned almost from the Zohar exclusively, had come to a profound, though dynamic, changeable insight into what he called the mystery of the Godhead. And Nathan had developed, well, supernatural healing powers, the very healing powers that would actually eventually attract Shabbatai Tzvi to visit him there in Gaza in the first place. Further, Nathan, despite his young age, he's only about 20 at the time, would become shockingly proficient in the highly technical intricacies of Lurianic Kabbalah. I mean, it's mind-blowing how fast he learned this stuff, especially learned in the debates around the primeval period of the Tzimtzum, or the divine contraction, up to the penetration of the divine light into that vacuum of the Tzimtzum, but prior to the emanation of the Sephirotic system. Yeah, that primeval, after the first movements of the hidden divine will, but before the Sephirot themselves became differentiated. Like that early on in the system, that's where the big debates were, but a lot more on that, all of that in just a moment. Now, as I mentioned, Shabbatai's mystical insight into the mystery of the Godhead, despite his, well, constantly transforming and deepening its meaning through the years, focused on restoring accessibility to the proper object of faith and worship for the people of Israel, i.e., the true God of worship. Shabbatai keyed in on a core problem that arises out of the concept of the divine, central in the main book of the Kabbalah, the Sefer Zohar, the Book of Radiance. There, the primary source of all being, via emanation, remains itself utterly hidden from all knowledge or speculation or comprehension. Ein Sof, the infinite, the divine abyss of nothingness or no thingness, is beyond all comprehension, it's beyond all speculation, and it's beyond all linguistic predication. One can't even speak of it being in any meaningful sense. Rather, the divine is actually known through a series of later emanations, the famous Sfirot. And even then, the first three Sfirot, Keter, Chochmah, and Binah, are also beyond all comprehension, but are concentrated in the synthetic Sephirah of Tiferet, which is the revealed glory of the divine and corresponds to the name of the divine as revealed to humanity, the Tetragrammaton, Yod He Vav He. But that creates an odd tension. It renders the true source of divinity not only beyond all comprehension, but also beyond all worship. It makes Judaism as a religion of worship of divine oneness impossible. Shabbatai's mystical insight is also a glimpse into his flair for the heterodox. He simply doubles down on the importance of the Sphira of Tiferet. Rather than understanding it as the revealed compression of the otherwise unknowable upper Sphirot, or the utterly unknown causeless cause of all causes, Ein Sof, he posits the ontological priority of Tiferet as Ein Sof enclosed or made manifest as a very necessary object of faith and worship. By extension, because Ein Sof was expressed in Tiferet, this would also unlock the higher Sephirotic structure, thus access to the supernal world, the supernal spiritual worlds, and the Torahs. Yeah, Torahs, plural, contained within them. Now, Shabbatai would alter, shift, deepen, and transform this understanding of the mystery of the Godhead. But the key idea of Tiferet as Ein Sof manifest as the God of faith and worship, as opposed to the more Maimonidean God of Ein Sof as the uncaused cause of all causes. Indeed, in a short essay early on in the Messianic movement, Nathan of Gaza would actually reinterpret the allegory of Jonah and the ship from Zoharic literature. In the Tikkunei Zohar, later strata of Zoharic literature, the ship represents the body and Jonah represents the soul. Whereas here, in the Messianic movement, faith in that movement actually puts further wind into the sails to, I guess, continue using that metaphor, thus actually hastening the redemption. Indeed, Nathan urges that this text, the Jonah text, and other penitential texts and hymns, were actually a means to drive prayers up the Sephirot from the vice-regent of Tiferet up like waves crashing into one another, creating a kind of frenzy of divine flow back up to the divine void of Keter, even back up into the cause of all causes up there in Ein Sof. An utterly daring possibility only made possible through Shabbatai's unlocking of the mystery of the Godhead. And that focus of his unlocking access to the supernal worlds through faith, through emunah, through faith, would play a decisive role in almost everything to come in the Shabbati theology. While Shabbatai's speculations about the mystery of the Godhead would provide a unique breakthrough, or a Narishkeit heretical breakdown, depending on your mileage here, it would also be up to his prophet, Nathan of Gaza, to actually build out a fully developed Kabbalistic theory to justify not just Shabbatai Tzvi's messianic claims, but also his aberrant behavior, his apparent apostasy, and, well, his death. Nathan would set to that task in 1665 in a series of extraordinary treaties, letters, and liturgical documents, many of which remain untranslated, many of which only recently got republished. And what I want to do is attempt to trace out what these arguments for the feverish period prior to Shabbatai's apostasy consisted of, and how they function within the larger Lurianic system of Kabbalah more generally, focusing primarily on Nathan's Derush HaTanaim, or their treatise on the dragons. Many of these early documents were actually written to explain to the early adopters of the Messianic faith, like, the wealthy Chalebi Raphael Joseph, who would actually bankroll the first years of the movement. You got to get that guy on board, the money guy. But just what did these people have their faith in exactly? What did it mean for Shabbatai Tzvi to be a Messiah at all? Like all Messianic movements, faith in a leader almost always comes first, with just what that means, sometimes taking centuries to work out. Think of the debates about the nature of Jesus following in the centuries after his followers were damn sure he was the Messiah, despite that whole dying part. Maybe he came back. Thus, Nathan brings to bear the most powerful theosophical tool he has access to do just that work: the system of the Lurianic Kabbalah on just those Messianic questions. Now, I want to impress upon you just how learned Nathan was at the age of basically 20. If you've ever learned Lurianic Kabbalah, you've probably actually just learned a relatively tidy version of the system of divine contraction, or Tzimtzum, the first ray of the divine light, the shattering of the vessels, the rise of evil from the powers of strict judgment, or Din, the origin of all the souls in the supernal body of Adam Kadmon, the exile and return of Shekhinah, etc., etc. But you might just not be aware of how absolutely contentious most of that was in the early days of grappling with what would become that relatively tidy version of Lurianic Kabbalah. There were significantly rival schools. Even Chaim Vital obscured and interpolated his own ideas into the Kibbeh Ha'ari when Luria's own ideas made him theologically uncomfortable. Further, other non-Chaim Vital expressions of Luria's ideas, such as those published by Israel Sarug or Joseph Ibn Tabul, though less popular now, may actually better represent the primitive Lurianic teachings. This was especially true when it came to the most contentious issues of that time period. What exactly happened in the process after Tzimtzum or divine contraction, but before the emanation of the Sefirot, especially in terms or regards the origin of evil or the Klipot. Now, Nathan of Gaza, better than virtually any of us today, understood not only that there was a real debate to be had about this, but he also understood the various positions in that debate, though he did understand them as all being kind of true at various esoteric levels of analysis. That's a whole other ball of wax. But he would offer a pretty synthetic solution. Further and more importantly, his solution would center on the origins of the soul of the Messiah and its struggle with the demonic Klipot at the heart of that utterly primeval period. A truly radical, novel solution found in neither the Zohar nor in the complex and diverse Lurianic speculations of his day. This is truly Nathan of Gaza's most pioneering move in the history of the Kabbalah. Now, the earliest mystical texts produced by Nathan are pseudepigraphic or forged. They're an account of a pious medieval rabbi named Abraham whose visions of the Messiah literally name and account for the birth date of Shabbatai Tzvi. They name him Shabbatai Tzvi, and they will say he's going to be born on Shabbat of the 9th of Av. That's actually the day held by the rabbis to be the birthday of the Messiah, so that's convenient Shabbatai. That aside, the theological core of the text includes the messianic idea of restoring the crown to its pristine glory. This is a reference to Shabbatai's revelation of the mystery of the Godhead mentioned earlier, such that Israel's worship will be properly restored, but that all of this is going to be accomplished through emunah, or faith, such that the just shall live by faith, one of the most popular verses from Tanakh in Shabbatian theology. The first letters of that verse kind of spell out Zevi, like Tzvi from Habakkuk. No, I'm not kidding, the kind of do. But further, that this faith or emunah is required for, among various other reasons, that the Messiah will undergo terrible torments and will perform strange and awesome deeds, even up to his own martyrdom, to perform the will of the Creator. In many ways, these early visionary texts set the stage for the more dramatically developed theology found in Nathan's groundbreaking treatise on the dragons, to which I want to turn to now. The treatise on the dragons, or the Drush Tanaim, is ostensibly a commentary on Zohar Volume 2, 34a through 35b, a notoriously difficult mythological section dealing with the origins of evil and the Klipot as a dreadful primeval dragon sunk into the pre-creation watery abyss. Now, as I mentioned in my episode about the origins of the Klipot and the Zohar, worth checking out again if you want to review this material, this text can't quite make up its mind about just what the origins of evil are. The Zohar is kind of all over the place with this question. But in this narrative, they seem to be primevally, perhaps even co-eternally real with the divine. That is to say, the divine light of emanation is not fully able to penetrate the murky deep of the demonic abyssal sea. Thus, the divine light serves to actually nourish this evil, thus allowing it to escape into various underground channels, leaving evil residue behind, which become the demonic Klipot of the Sitra Achra, the sinister other side of creation. But, as I mentioned, the Zohar has several narratives about the origin of evil, and harmonizing and systematizing these accounts became of paramount interest to later Kabbalists. Of course, the priority of this task makes perfectly good sense. I mean, the origins of evil will also be logically linked to redeeming and overcoming just that evil, and that's one of the central goals, maybe the central goal of the Kabbalah itself. And it's precisely into that debate that Nathan will provide his answer and center the questions of the origin and destiny of the Messiah's soul, a theoretic innovation wholly unique to Shabbatine theology. So Nathan takes up the standard debate about the primeval conditions where they were in his time, basically. Following the initial movement of the divine will in the act of Tzimtzum or contraction, a vacuum-like state is left behind called the Tehiru. I say vacuum-like because it's not totally empty. Within the Tehiru, there is a kind of residue of Ein Sof left behind, a bit like what happens if you try to pour olive oil out of a container. There's always some of it left, a kind of thin layer of residue of oil left behind in the vacuum of the jar or whatever. This residue, or the Rishimu left over by the contraction of Ein Sof, contains an admixture of pure chesed, or mercy, and pure deen, or strict judgment, from which the Sfirot and the Klipot will ultimately emerge, or what the Klipot actually are. And that's where the first front in this debate really opens up. Did pure deen, or strict judgment as evil itself, exist within the divine abyss of Ein Sof all along? Luria seems to have thought so, but Vital was uncomfortable with this notion, it seems, and in the standard text of Eitz Chaim, the differentiation of pure deen as such, Sitra Achra, happens much later in the emanation of the Sephirotic system, which at this point produces evil as we know it. That's the deen part producing evil without being checked by chesed. Thus it seemed that the debate is about whether evil existed as a primordial condition within the Godhead of Ein Sof, or as a result of the later divine emanations at another stage of creation. Following the Zohar at 234a and following, Nathan seems to posit that not only does the residual Rishimu contain the Klipotic dinim, or forces of judgment or evil, which are left behind as a kind of divine catharsis prior to creation itself, but the vacuum-like Tehiru itself is negatively charged. That is to say, there are forces near the divine which are energetically and creatively inclined, but the lower reaches of the Tehiru, the region that Nathan terms the golem, or the unformed, or the undifferentiated, are marked by their passivity and their anti-creation gravitation, dragging into those depths the residual dinim, or klipot, which eventually congregate and collect in the lower half of that vast abyss of the golem. This would be developed further, especially in both the thoughtsome and thoughtless light in Ein Sof that forms the contour of the Tehiru in Nathan's later post-apostasy book of creation. But in this more radical take, the Sitra Achra, or the other side, isn't the other side of the Sfirot. It's the Sitra Achra of Ein Sof itself. Probably one of the most daring and provocative ideas ever expressed in Kabbalah, but again, that's more from the Book of Creation. There's a more moderate form to be found of this idea in the Treatise on the Dragons. Thus, the primeval state of being prior to the insertion of the divine light, which inaugurates creation properly in the Kabbalah, is for Nathan one profoundly dualistic in nature, and even overwhelmingly tending toward evil as a non- or even anti-creation force. There are only the forces of the upper Tehiru, marked by the Rishimu of pure chesed, and one more decisive element, the souls of the righteous that the Klipot clung to within the divine abyss of Ein Sof, dragging them into the darkness. These powerfully righteous souls will go on to be folks like Abraham and Moses, the most important people in this mythology, but they are at this point the fuel upon which the parasitic Klipot feed, which, so far from the divine light, are actually necessary for the demonic husks to maintain any existence at all. Plunged into the very abyss of near non-being, these souls are like fuel cells which prevent the Klipot from tattering off into pure non-existence, at least in this primitive period of creation. And this is where Nathan's most dramatic move happens. Plunged into the deepest depths of the Klipot, into the hellish torment of the parasitism at the very abyss of non-existence, is the tortured soul of the Messiah. Here the soul of the Messiah, plunged into the darkest depths of the abyss of the Tehiru, struggles with the worst of the Klipot, the horrid dragon of the abyss. Indeed, in some of the more extreme passages, it appears that the soul of the Messiah even began as an aspect of this horrid dragon of the depths, though Nathan never seems totally willing to commit to that position, and even slight changes in the reading of the Hebrew seem to change whether he actually commits to this. I don't think he ever really does. But even if he did, it would fit within the idea of the dialectic of the resolution of evil into good through the process of redemption. But at this point, Nathan picks up on a concept from Chaim Vital, the now representative student of Luria. This is the concept of the holy ruse, the holy deception of the Klipot. For Vital, especially holy souls, thus those settled into the depths of the Tehiru, could only be released from the clutches of the Klipot by an act of cunning or divine trickery or fraud to trick the forces of evil into releasing those really righteous souls. Remember, the Klipot need them to feed upon. This was primarily done by the divine destining those souls to undergo or commit a deed in their life so awful or morally outrageous that the forces of the Klipot thought that would actually allow them to both feed off of them in this primeval period, but also because such horrible deeds would eventually be committed, they could also recapture these various powerful souls and thus return them to the depths of the abyss, having committed such dreadful misdeeds to feed on them forever. But because the divine had planned just such a ruse, these apparent sins would actually allow these very powerful souls a kind of escape velocity from the forces of the Klipot by engaging in a higher degree of redemptive work. The minor sins, relatively speaking, will be overcome by a huger arc of redemption. Thus, for instance, Abraham was conceived by a menstruating and thus ritually unfit woman whose father, Terach, was an idol maker who helped lead the world astray. But it will be Abraham who would pioneer monotheism and put the world on the straight path, I guess. Or David, who admits in Psalm 51 that he was literally conceived in sin, and would commit horrible moral outrages during his whole life. But he created the conditions for the Israelite polity and the temple, thus gambling that being born in such conditions and given to such sins in life, the Klipot wagered they will win twice by releasing these souls. But upon doing so, the trap is set and the Klipot are eventually beaten back, the initial sin giving way to a greater arc of redemption. But their tortured sojourn in the realm of the Klipot leaves behind a kind of scar upon their very being, such they have a tendency towards such sins and actually delight in them or are indifferent to such devilish behavior. Thus, as the Talmud has it, the more righteous a person is, the more tortured by sin they are, thus explaining David's tendency toward violence and sexual aggression, and Abraham's apparent complete ease at being asked to sacrifice his only son, his beloved son, who isn't his only son, Ishmael, but whatever. This Klipotic evil has influenced their very souls. It makes them prone to acts of evil and perhaps even delighting in that evil. This mechanism of the holy ruse is just what Nathan of Gaza needs in his messianic theology vis-a-vis Shabtai Tzvi. The soul of the Messiah, sunk into the very heart of the abyss and most acutely struggling with the worst of the forces of the Klipot, would eventually emerge from those depths. But the Klipotic influence will remain so profound that he would undergo the heights of divine illumination, followed by the depths of soul-crushing sorrow, thus explaining Shabbatai's apparent manic depressive personality cycles. But this would also be used to explain the apparently transgressive actions performed by Shabbatai, his strange deeds, which are apparent violations of the Torah, even inversion of such commandments, such that they can be accompanied by a kind of even blasphemous blessing, punning on the morning blessing for freeing the captive, Matir Asarim, as opposed to allowing the forbidden, Matir Isarim. There's no change in the spelling, the pun that's kind of delightfully heretical. But Nathan takes this even a step further.